In my past life, I disguised myself as a man to take my brother's place in battle, and he became a celebrated general. In this life, we are reborn together. I have just been born, but my brother, who I remember as gentle and refined, bribed the midwife and said with a voice as cold as ice, "Throw her into the mass grave to feed the wolves. Go back and tell the family head that the second young lady died in the womb." Afterwards, he glared at my tiny face in the swaddling clothes with a sinister expression. "You are the one who most deserves to die. Who told you to cause Gigi's death?" The burial mound was shrouded in ink-black night, a sinister wind seeping into the bones, a foul stench of rotting corpses and blood assailed the nostrils. It was utterly nauseating. My brother's voice, brimming with hatred, echoed in my ears. "Rui, you deserve to die. You killed Gigi. You must pay with your life." My heart was desolate. I understood that my brother had already been reborn. At this moment, trapped in hell, I gaze up at the pitch-black sky, my chest filled with hatred. In my past life, I have crawled and fought through a sea of blood. Disguised as a man, I went to the battlefield to kill the enemy. I won countless military honors for my brother, clear away all the hidden arrows and enemies for him, protect him for a lifetime of peace. Now, reborn into this life, yet he hates me to the bone because of the fake daughter. I wish I could. I die. I indifferently opened my eyes, my heart turning cold. In this lifetime, I have also been reborn. Tang Ji, she was the fake young lady that my brother later picked up. Past life, a nameless beggar. On a snowy day, she clung to my brother's leg and refused to let go. Those crimson-red eyes had effortlessly captured her brother's heart. She was taken back to the Tang family and carefully nurtured, becoming the third young lady of the Tang family. Over a decade of meticulous planning and acting, finally, my wish has been granted. I have won a bit of my brother's pity. I never took to heart the many schemes she plotted against me in daily life, but she should never have crossed that line, should not covet her brother. She intended to drug him and climb into her brother's bed. I discovered it. I directly tied her up and threw her outside, leaving her to fend for herself, but she was picked up by a drunken coachman, and a night of disgrace ensued. Afterwards, she could not bear the humiliation, and took her own life by hanging. On that day, my brother was in immense pain. He grabbed me by the neck, demanding to know why. "Why did you harm the one I love?" I lifted my head with difficulty and coldly replied, "She has a long-standing grudge against the Tang family. She approached you only for revenge." My brother's eyes were bloodshot as he kicked me to the ground, roaring, "What do you know? What do you understand? Gigi was willing to let go of her hatred for me. It was you who killed her." 4 years after that, my brother and I became like strangers, until, my brother, under the title of general, embarked on an expedition to Shiliang. My father ordered me to protect him in secret. On the battlefield, I took a fatal arrow for him, the shaft piercing straight through my chest. In the depths of agony, I reached out to grab him. Countless words were left unspoken, leaving only one phrase, "Brother." Yet he took a step back, his eyes filled with hatred. The moment I fell, the red-eyed one laughed maniacally. "Tang Rui, you should have died long ago. You should have paid with your life for Gigi long ago." The night was deep and dark, and the distant howls of wolves were chilling. I dared not make a sound. Cautiously scanning my surroundings, trapped in an infant's body, I could neither run nor hide. If the wolf were to pounce, I would surely meet my end. But in a moment, the heavy breathing of beasts drew near. Several wild wolves, stepping over bones, approached. The ghostly green light in their eyes flickered, and their howls shook the heavens. They were poised to pounce. My heart had turned to ashes. At that very moment, a sharp arrow pierced through the air. 1 arrow, 2 arrows, 4 arrows. Clean and decisive, 4 vicious wolves, convulsing on the ground. Under the moonlight, a young boy in red stood amidst a sea of corpses, tilting his head and raising an eyebrow. The golden bow was still in his hand, held high. A wicked smile curled at the corner of his lips. Behind him, a young eunuch of about 10 years old was trembling in his legs. His voice cracked with fear. "Why, your highness, what should we do with this wolf?" The young boy leaped down from the pile of corpses. He chuckled lightly with his hands behind his back, his tone casual. "Skin it." My entire body stiffened, and I shuddered violently. The wolf was not yet dead, still howling in agony. The little prince in red appeared to be no more than 5 or 6 years old, an age as tender as a soft, round dumpling. Yet he spoke of skinning it as casually as if it were nothing, a youthful face paired with a chilling demeanor, utterly terrifying. I wondered to myself, which prince had arrived. In the 8th year of Zhanning, the court had always valued civil officials over military ones. Among the imperial heirs, few were skilled in archery and horsemanship. The young eunuch's legs turned to jelly, and he dared not step forward. The young prince then drew a short dagger from his boot and casually tossed it to him. "Skin it, quickly." After saying that, he had already hopped right in front of me. My heart tightened, and I immediately closed my eyes, pretending to be dead. A living kid. A cold fingertip touched my cheek. I was so startled that my eyes snapped open. Right in front of me were a pair of pitch-black, sparkling eyes, wild and wolf-like. "You're warm, you're alive." He stared at me for a few seconds, the corners of his mouth curled into an excited and wicked smile. "Will you be my little sister? 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. If you don't speak, then let's peel them together." Me. The young prince tossed out a single sentence. The little eunuch, terrified, immediately rushed to my front, stammering as he explained, "Your Highness, she can't speak yet." I blinked, looking at him. The little prince grinned, smiling wantonly. "I know. I'm just teasing her. This kid is brave. Didn't cry. I like that." The little eunuch wiped his sweat and muttered as if talking to himself, "Could it be that she's too young to understand you're threatening her?" The little prince twitched the tip of his ear and ignored him. He raised his hand and pointed at the wolf, which was still twitching. "What's going on?" The young eunuch's legs instantly went weak. He dropped to his knees with a thud and began kowtowing frantically. "Your Highness, spare my life. I don't know how to skin an animal. I beg you, spare my life." "Oh." The young prince took the dagger, his tone terrifyingly calm. "Then you're really stupid. Watch closely and learn." He calmly crouched down, his movements clean and precise. In just a few strokes, he had skinned a wolf completely. Casually, he pulled out a freshly skinned wolf pelt from the ground. It was bloody. "Toss it to the little eunuch, wrap her in it and bring her back to the palace." The little eunuch's hands and feet trembled, while wrapping the bloody wolf skin around me. He muttered complaints under his breath. "What kind of fate is this? Everyone else gets promoted to the imperial household department, while I end up in the hands of this mad crown prince. Heavens, why don't you just take me now?" My eyelid twitched violently. The Crown Prince Xue Xiao in the 8th year of Zhanning, the tyrant Mingji 12 years later. Xue Xiao had only been on the throne for a month before he was forced to abdicate due to his tyranny and cruelty. In the end, the Empress Dowager silenced him with a single sword stroke to the throat. He died on the spot. When he died, I was still in the army at the border, by the time I returned to the capital. The new emperor had ascended, the Empress Dowager was ruling, and the world was at peace. My heart sank straight down. Fate spared my life, yet, by some cruel twist of fate, I ended up in the hands of this future tyrant. That night, the bone-chilling wind seeped into me, and the terror of the mass graves overwhelmed me. I fell gravely ill, and Xue Xiao summoned a physician to treat me. I barely managed to save my life once again. Since then, I have been constantly weak and exhausted. Crown Prince Xue Xiao had no choice but to place me in an ancient temple outside the city. He personally visits me every month, bringing medicine and food. He is not as licentious, cruel, and tyrannical as the rumors suggest. He took care of me, attending to every detail, no matter how small. He even invited experts to teach me both literary and military strategies, and to train me in martial arts to strengthen my body. While combing my hair, he once said, "Are you, in these troubled times? The more you learn, the better you can protect yourself." I practiced diligently and earnestly, secretly regaining the combat prowess from my past life. In both my past and present lives, I have been decisive in killing and conquest. Within a range of 10 zhong, a top-tier expert could be killed with a single move. Every time he came to see me, he would measure my height, his tone gentle. "Little Jade, you've grown taller again. In a little while, you'll be as tall as your brother." 15 years have passed. The eminent monk in the mountain sent someone down to deliver a letter, stating that I have fully recovered. Xue Xiao replied, "I shall come personally to fetch you." At 20 years old, Xue Xiao stood tall and straight, with unparalleled looks. He who bears the bright and noble appearance of a clear breeze and a luminous moon, yet has a peculiar fondness for dressing in brilliant crimson, holding a golden fan, he flaunts his presence with unbridled audacity. Rumors in the streets say that this crown prince is of a capricious and unpredictable temperament. Though young in years, his heart is ruthless and his methods cruel. The right faction, led by the chancellor, had once presented him with piles of beautiful women. Overnight, all the beauties died suddenly. Their bodies were also burned to ashes by someone, and the mansions of those who had presented them were splattered with black dog's blood, written in blood, "Give me back my life." All those involved stayed behind closed doors for a full 7 days before daring to step outside. The crown prince became famous overnight through this battle, dreaded by all, but to me, Crown Prince Xue Xiao is my savior. He is my brother. The little eunuch who used to tremble in fear back then, named Ji Rong, still followed by his side. When he saw me, he respectfully called out, "Welcome back to the residence, Princess Yu." The name Xue Xiao gave me, Xue Yu. My eyes curved into crescents. The black Buddhist beads between Xue Xiao's fingers twisted and untwisted. Upon seeing me, he spread his arms wide and flashed a carefree smile. "Little Jade, come here." In the carriage returning to the capital, Xue Xiao reclined lazily on the soft couch, looking at me with a languid tone. "Little Jade, is there anything you wish to do once we return to the capital?" I pushed aside the curtain and gazed at the winding mountain path. Like an innocent young girl, I raised my brows and smiled lightly. "Of course there is. I want to eat all the delicacies of the capital with the crown prince, watch operas, enjoy dances, ride horses, drink wine." Xue Xiao raised his sleeve and gently tapped my forehead with a finger. "At such a young age, you're already thinking about drinking." I covered my forehead, pretending to be wronged. "Ouch, ouch, ouch. Brother Crown Prince, how old are you? Still bullying a child?" Xue Xiao laughed heartily. I turned my head, rubbing my fair forehead. Yet in the depths of my eyes, a chill instantly settled. 15 years have passed. The Tang family must have already taken back that fake daughter. Counting the days, Tang Ji will make her move half a year later, at her brother Tang Mu's birthday banquet. This time, the rise and fall of the Tang family depends entirely on her brother's decision, and I, just be an observer. The carriage traveling discreetly made its way into the capital city. It was still bustling and lively as ever. Street vendors selling sugar figurines, steamed bun shops, tea stalls, crowds surged everywhere. Suddenly, a familiar, silvery voice rang out, "Brother Mu, I want this, and I want that too." It was Tang Ji. I rolled down the car window. Tang Ji, dressed in a pink silk dress, was holding Tang Mu's arm and acting coquettishly. Tang Mu wore a black brocade robe, his eyes smiling, but his left arm was wrapped in bandages. Injured, Xue Xiao noticed my intense gaze and said with a laugh, "Young Master Tang Mu of the Tang family, if you take a fancy to Brother Crown Prince, you're teasing me again." I shook my head, blinking as if curious. "They look extraordinary in their attire and demeanor. I just want to know how he got that injury." Xue Xiao picked up a grape and bit into it expressionlessly. "The eldest son of the Tang family fought with Chu Zhenhong, the young master of the escort agency, over his sister." My eyes sparkled. "And then what?" "A crushing defeat. The whole city knows about it." I pouted, pretending to be naive. I thought he was a skilled martial artist, but he turned out to be so weak. I was actually looking forward to sparring with him. But deep down, I was silently mulling over that name. Chu Zhenhong, young master of the Nanfeng escort agency. The escort agency's business spread throughout Fengdu, and even the prime minister's residence would give his father some face. Tang Mu was indeed bold, for Tang Ji. He dared to lay his life at another's feet. Understandable. That is Tang Ji. The Tang Ji he was willing to harm his own sister to keep. Xue Xiao noticed the change in my expression and leaned in to ask, "Xiao Yue, you seem particularly concerned about the Tang family today." My heart tightened. My cheeks instantly flushed red as I pushed him away. "I don't care if his surname is Tang or Li. My hands are just itching to spar with someone. Brother Crown Prince, could you please stop scaring me all the time?" Xue Xiao laughed with his head tilted back and tossed another grape into his mouth. "If it's sparring you want, I can do that too. How about I keep you company?" I looked up at him and smiled softly as well. If the Crown Prince could accompany me, that would be truly wonderful. My gaze unintentionally shifted to the window, the smile still lingering on my face. It met Tang Mu's eyes outside the carriage. That moment, I saw Tang Mu's pupils suddenly constrict. His horrified gaze met mine. My expression remained unchanged. I curled my lips in a silent, cold smile. Tang Mu suddenly froze in place. Behind him, Tang Ji followed his line of sight. Her brow slightly furrowed as she tugged at his hand, acting coquettishly. "Brother, what's wrong with you?" "Nothing. Perhaps my eyes deceived me." Tang Mu's face was pale, gazing at the distant carriage. He withdrew his thoughts. The third day of the third month, the Flower Goddess Festival. The Crown Prince held a banquet at his residence. The Tang family received the invitation and made a special trip with their children to attend the banquet. Tang Ji was dressed to the nines. Her mother held her hand, quietly pointing out the distinguished young gentlemen from various prominent families. What a pity! Tang Ji's beautiful eyes only lingered on Tang Mu. The two of them glanced at each other from afar, and their cheeks flushed red. The matriarchs went ahead and took their seats in the front hall. "I prefer simple clothing and dislike luxurious silks and satins." With a faint smile, I went forward to greet the noble lady. The maid Xinga said gently, "Please follow me to wash your hands." I stood under the corridor, wearing a veil, and made a gesture. "Please." A breeze swept through the long corridor, lifting half of my veil. Someone from the men's seating area noticed first, and soon whispers began to spread. "Which family's young lady is that? Just half a face, yet so stunningly beautiful. From her attire, it's clear she's not favored, probably a daughter from a concubine in some family." I couldn't be bothered to respond. My gaze still calmly lowered, but out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Tang Mu nearby. His pupils suddenly contracted, his gaze filled with terror as if he had seen a vengeful ghost. Tang Ji followed his line of sight and looked over. In that instant, a cold light flashed in her eyes. The noble ladies stepped forward one by one. It was Tang Ji's turn to pass by my side. She shifted her body slightly, and the white veil swayed. The next second, my shoulder felt a heavy weight. There was a sharp rip sound. The hem of her skirt was torn apart by her own force. She fell to the ground faster than I did, her voice soft and tearful. "Oh dear, my foot." Several noble ladies nearby immediately gathered around her, helping her up, and quickly took the lead to speak. "What lowly servant dares to offend the daughter of the Duke of Zhenghua? Have you grown a bear's heart and a leopard's gall?" I stood quietly in place. My gaze coldly fell upon Tang Ji's pale, chilling fingers. The flaw was so obvious it was laughable. The earlier exclamations from the male guests had already left these noble ladies feeling displeased. Their decision to confront me now had nothing to do with standing up for the Tang family. All they wanted was to vent their petty frustrations. Xinga, flustered and furious, wanted to speak up for me. I raised my hand to stop her, my voice light and cheerful. "You step back first." Then I lifted my gaze and chuckled softly. "I'd like to ask, who actually saw me do it with their own eyes? Those who falsely accuse me of wrongdoing don't tend to live very long, that's how it usually goes." Tang Ji's face visibly drained of color. She let out another startled ayo, in fear. Just now she said her ankle hurt. At this moment, I feel as if my entire leg is broken. Standing at the very front was the noble daughter of a marquis household. When Shuhua, she, who had always relied on her wealthy family background, had been arrogant and unruly. In cahoots with Tang Ji, the methods used are increasingly despicable. Her expression cracked slightly as she shouted sharply, "You lowly slave, with your sharp tongue, I'll have someone cut it out right now." Another maid in the Crown Prince's residence, Zhichuan, hurried over upon hearing this and knelt down. "This won't do. This won't do, madam. This is His Highness the Crown Prince's concubine." When Shuhua interrupted her, his eyes cold and gloomy. "You should at least use your brain when making up lies. Everyone under heaven knows that our Crown Prince has no interest in women. When has the Crown Prince's residence ever kept a woman? Whoever dares to stop me, drag them out and beat them to death. Guards, cut out her tongue. I'll take responsibility for whatever happens." I clapped my hands and laughed. "Sister, can you truly bear this responsibility?" Unable to offend anyone on either side, Zhichun was so terrified that she frantically kowtowed on the ground. When Shuhua's anger surged, her palm raised high in the air, she intended to make a public display of authority against me. I didn't bother to lift my eyes, merely raising my left hand slightly. With only 30% of my strength, I pinned her hand mid-air, leaving her unable to move. The next moment, my right hand moved like the wind, striking from both sides. A series of crisp slaps exploded, landing on her face more densely than drumbeats. "You lowly servant, let go quickly, it hurts, it's killing me, you wretch, how dare you, it hurts, ah, it hurts, ancestor, great hero, I beg you, spare me," she cursed incoherently, and her plea for mercy was utterly pathetic. The whole thing lasted only an instant. I let go, when Shu's portrait seemed to have its soul sucked out, as she slumped to the ground. Just moments ago, she was the haughty young lady of a noble house. Now, her face was swollen like a pig's head, tears streamed down her face like rain-soaked pear blossoms. The noble ladies and guests around simultaneously gasped in shock. Their eyes were filled with utter astonishment. No one had ever imagined a seemingly delicate maidservant could beat the Wen family's young lady into such a state right on the spot. While Wen Shuhua was still in a daze, I turned to look at Tang Ji, who was sitting on the ground. "The one from the Duke's household, this young lady is standing up for you, yet you're trying to wash your hands of the matter completely." Tears welled up in Tang Ji's eyes. "What kind of talk is this?" I said coldly. "Did you fall on purpose yourself, or did I trip you? We both know the truth in our hearts." However, I brushed off my sleeves as I walked forward. The noble ladies, arm in arm, stepped back in fear. "Since everyone believes you were hurt because of me, I can't let people wrongfully accuse me." The next second, I stomped hard on Tang Ji's ankle, with a clever twist. The pain brought tears to her eyes. Tang Ji gasped sharply. You. She saw the person behind me and suddenly screamed, Brother, you have to avenge me." This maid broke my leg by stepping on it. Looking for death, everyone turned at the sound. Tang Mu's face was ashen as he walked step by step toward me. He lowered his gaze and stood before me. "Shouldn't you give my Tang family an explanation?" The noble ladies whispered softly. "Tang Mu dotes on his sister the most. That maid is in for a rough time today. I think she's quite a formidable character herself." Listening to the crowd's murmurs, I smiled. What explanation? Upon seeing Tang Mu, Tang Ji's tears fell like broken pearls, her eyes brimming with tears as she uttered weakly, "Brother, Gigi hurts so much." Tang Mu's heart ached as he crouched down to comfort her. "Brother has already sent someone to fetch the imperial physician." He stood up once more, his expression dark and cold. "I don't care who you are, but if you've harmed Gigi, you deserve to die. Speak. Why did you intentionally cripple Gigi?" The noble ladies trembled once again. "It seems the rumors are true. This Tang Mu goes mad whenever it comes to Tang Ji. Today is the Crown Prince's banquet. Would he really shed blood for Tang Ji right in the Crown Prince's residence? This is outright disrespectful." Tang Mu sneered. "If you apologize, I can spare your life. Choose, an arm or a leg." Tang Mu, after all, still thought so. I was the same as in my previous life. I allowed him to misunderstand and hurt me. Without resisting in the slightest, beneath my sleeve, my hand clenched and then relaxed. Before I smiled and said, "The one who should apologize is Miss Tang. She deliberately tore my dress, so she naturally has to compensate. I stepped on her foot, so we're even." But it was her who made those slanderous remarks, falsely accusing me for no reason. Tell me, shouldn't she apologize to me? Counting the time, Brother Crown Prince should be arriving soon, unrepentant. Tang Mu angrily raised her hand, and several noble ladies who were close to the Tang family personally stepped forward to restrain me, then wait for death. Tang Mu sent someone to fetch a long sword. Immediately after, when Shuhua snapped back to reality and walked over to me, her face swollen, she tore the veil from my face and froze for a moment. Then she slapped me hard across the face. "You really are a seductive fox. Someone, cut out her tongue first, then ruin her face." A sudden gust of wind rose before the garden gate, scattering the murmurs that filled the courtyard. "Mother Empress, is this Yue?" Xue Shao's footsteps halted abruptly, his gaze suddenly darkening. He had just gone to fetch the Empress, but when he looked up, he saw this farce. At the end of the long corridor, I was being held by both arms, my cheeks swollen and red. Xue Shao's face was ashen. Walking quickly from the corridor, he hadn't had time to speak yet. Yet there was someone who wasn't afraid of death. When Shuhua straightened her neck, gave a light laugh, and curtsied, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, this lowly maid impersonated your concubine, and I have given her a slight punishment. Please do not blame me." Before the words had even finished, "Get out." Xue Shao merely raised his hand coldly. the force from his sleeve so fierce that when Shu's portrait was sent flying backward like a kite with its string cut, the entire hall fell abruptly silent. Xue Xiao's eyes darkened like an abyss as he strode forward. The noble ladies who were pinning me down were so frightened by his mere glance that their legs went weak and they let go. I secretly curled my lips into a smile. The next moment, he pulled me tightly into his embrace. "Who gave you permission to touch her?" His voice was low and icy, carrying a destructive sense of danger. Everyone held their breath. I weakly and helplessly grabbed his sleeve, hiding in his embrace while whimpering, "Brother Crown Prince, they're all bullying Yue. Yue is in so much pain. Noble ladies, what's going on here?" The Empress rushed over upon hearing the commotion, her face grim. "Greetings, Your Majesty the Empress." Everyone bowed in salute. The Empress's gaze fell upon Xue Xiao's embrace. Then, it turned towards me. In her eyes, there was shock, there was delight, but in an instant, it returned to calm. "Xiao, is this Yue?" Xue Xiao helped me up, and I bowed my head in greeting. "Greetings to Her Majesty the Queen." The Queen smiled. "You resemble her so much. Come closer to me. In my previous life, I had attended many palace banquets but never had the chance to gain the Queen's favor. The closest I ever got to her was in the Imperial Garden. When my sedan chair passed by hers, Xue Xiao signaled for me to come over. The Empress held my hand and spoke in an affectionate tone. "Who has wronged you? Tell your mother. This queen is really interesting. She immediately claims me as her daughter." Without any hesitation, I laugh heartily and say, "Everyone." A single, light-hearted remark made everyone present kneel down in fear. When Shu Hua knelt, Tang Ji knelt. Tang Mu was also stunned for a few seconds. He quickly knelt down. I held the Empress's jade-like hand, borrowing her authority to intimidate others, my eyes shining brightly. They didn't know my identity, so they treated me poorly. "But, Your mother, I don't want to make a big deal out of it. An apology will suffice. After all, today is the Flower Goddess Festival, so let's focus on the important matters." Hearing my address of Mother Empress, Tang Mu was so frightened that he repeatedly kowtowed. "I did not know it was the princess earlier. Please punish me, Your Majesty the Empress." The Empress looked at me with a gaze full of kindness. You are still so kind-hearted. Very well, I will do as you say. If Her Highness the Princess says to let it go, then let it be." She lowered her gaze to the kneeling crowd and said with displeasure, "Are those kneeling over there from the Wen family? What happened to your face?" When Shu Hua was so frightened that she immediately kowtowed on the spot. "It was my daughter who accidentally fell, and her face was injured, which frightened Your Highness. Please forgive us." Then, the noble ladies, along with Tang Mu, all bowed to me in apology. "Your Highness, the Princess, please forgive us." I waved my hand. "No matter." The Queen held my hand, unwilling to let go. "Wait, my sister said she would spare you, but I never agreed." Zhe Chuan stood respectfully behind Xue Xiao, silent. He must have already told Xue Xiao the whole story. Xue Xiao withdrew his gaze from me. Slowly raising his eyes, he pointed at Wen Shuhua. "Just now, was it you who clamored to cut Yue's tongue?" When Shuhua stepped back in fright, her legs trembling uncontrollably, she opened her mouth to argue. The next moment, no one saw how he moved. They only saw Xue Xiao's fingertips land on 2 points beside her neck. When Shuhua's throat tightened, and half of her tongue uncontrollably slipped out. The short dagger flashed coldly, as neat as slicing flower petals. The tongue fell with a crisp sound. Blood splattered on the skirt. Silence, a deathly silence fell, when Shu's painted tongue, broken. I was the only one in the entire hall who saw it clearly. In that brief moment, Xue Xiao's figure was like a ghost. In the eyes of the others, only bloodshed and terror remained. He calmly wiped his fingertips with a pristine handkerchief. "Take it away, send it back to the Marquis's residence." After speaking, it was as if he suddenly remembered something. He lifted his gaze and scanned the crowd. Who else? Tang Ji. Tang Ji was already scared out of his wits. Her forehead was bright red from kowtowing on the ground. Tang Mu stood firmly in front of her, struggling to stay conscious. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, I am willing to take my sister's punishment." I shot a glance toward Xue Xiao. The Empress has always disliked the Crown Prince's cruel and murderous nature. He should not have displeased the Empress publicly because of me. Xue Xiao said coldly, "Your protective feelings for your sister are something I can appreciate. Today, I will spare you once, The queen's expression was terrifyingly dark as she looked at Xue Xiao. The atmosphere of the entire banquet plummeted to freezing point. After that day, the Wen family's young lady was carried back to her residence, her vocal cords destroyed. The young lady of the Tang family was forced back to her residence. How dare she show her face in public again? As for Tang Mu, he drank alone at the banquet, looking as wretched as a stray dog. Those frivolous young men, who were always quick to fawn on the powerful and trample on the weak, exchanged knowing smirks among themselves, offending the crown prince, defying the princess. Young Master Tang's days are numbered. Past life, in the name of Tang Mu, I won him the title of general. Now, it is his own choice to remain within the mansion, protecting Tang Ji for a lifetime of peace. By his generation, the Tang family had already declined. In the eyes of outsiders, Tang Mu, who had neither achievements nor reputation to his name, was merely a profligate son relying on the prestige of the old duke of the town. The banquet came to an end. After applying the medicine, I sat alone in the pavilion, drinking strong liquor. The spicy taste burned my throat. My whole body grew restless. The brothers I once faced life and death with, though not related by blood, were truly the ones I could entrust my back to. Now I am in the capital, but there is no one left to trust. I should have known this long ago. In this world, no one is ever kind to me without a reason. Xue Xiao saved me because I have a pair of eyes similar to his sisters. Princess Xue Yu was the daughter of the imperial consort. She was born on the same year, month, and day as Xue Xiao, but drowned at the age of 4. This was originally a secret of the royal family. That day, Xue Yu fell into the water in order to save Xue Xiao. Not long after, the imperial consort also took her own life by hanging. The imperial consort and the empress were sisters. The Song family had 2 peerless beauties, both of whom caught the emperor's eye. The bond between the noble consort and the empress runs deep. Xue Xiao also knew he had committed a grave mistake. Until, 15 years ago, I was found in a mass burial ground. Yua, did I frighten you today, brother? The night breeze brushed against the candlelight as he stood beneath the corridor, holding a wine pot. A trace of barely noticeable timidity flickering in his expression. Are you okay? I'm fine, brother Crown Prince. I smiled naturally, yet my fingertips trembled slightly within my sleeves. Perhaps the reason he saved me was simply because the empress missed her late sister's child too much. Xue Xiao reached out his hand to me. I instinctively took half a step back. Yua, he froze, a wounded light flashing in his eyes for a moment. A moment later, he whispered softly. Do you blame me for keeping some things from you? That sigh fell lightly into the night. When I saved you back then, it wasn't because you resembled my sister, nor was it to gain my mother's favor. It was because of your eyes, which made me feel you were desperately trying to live. He lifted his head and took a sip of wine, his Adam's apple moving. Perhaps it was my illusion. You had just been born back then. What could you possibly understand about longing? But over the years, I have truly felt for you. Since you were a child, your body has been frail, and several times when you fell ill, your life hung by a thread. I had no choice but to seek the help of the ghost doctor to treat you. He specializes in using poison to cure diseases. Even I could hardly endure the bone-devouring pain. Your will to survive far exceeded my imagination. Under the moonlight, his eyes and brows softened with tenderness. You were so small, so very small, yet during the treatments, you never cried or made a fuss. I remained silent. Past life, the poison that burned through bones and blood in those nights, the deadly trials endured through gritted teeth, the scars covering the body, I could survive them all, scraping the bone to heal the wound, fighting poison with poison. These were never the most painful. It was all over, the clearest memory of all. It was the anxiety and helplessness of Xue Xiao staying by my bedside during my childhood fevers that wouldn't subside. It was him feeding me medicine spoonful by spoonful, softly coaxing. Be good, Yua, endure it. After you finish the bitter medicine, brother will get you some candied fruit, the poison of the ghost doctor. Those wounds, it doesn't hurt at all. Yet, my heart aches terribly. If Xue Xiao ever had a moment of tenderness, it was for me. Xue Xiao reached out and ruffled my hair. This is the first time I have seen a woman with such strong endurance. I am also curious to see what this stubborn little sick kitten will eventually grow into. My throat tightened, and I could no longer utter a single word of detachment. He lowered his hand and said softly, I have said that I would protect you for the rest of your life. Now that you have grown up safely, I am very happy." The knight was silent. With reddened eyes, I whispered softly, "I'm very happy too, brother Crown Prince. The person I met at the mass graves back then, it was you." A month later, it happened to be Tang Mu's birthday. The Tang family held a banquet at their residence. They invited His Highness the Crown Prince to join in the festivities. Knowing that I enjoy lively gatherings, Xue Xiao brought me along to attend the banquet. That day, Tang Mu was in high spirits. Out of respect for the Crown Prince, the young masters began to treat Tang Mu with deference. As the wine flowed and spirits rose, Tang Mu began to complain of dizziness. "Next time, I'll drink with you again next time, Brother Li." Tang Mu was escorted back to his room by the servants. Before long, a woman's scream came from the room. Xue Xiao and I exchanged a glance, then lifted our skirts and hurried over. Just like in my past life, Tang Ji had drugged the wine. Everyone was gathered at the door, and I pulled Xue Xiao forward to get a closer look. Tang Ji was trembling all over, wrapped in the quilt, with large areas of her fragrant shoulders faintly visible. Tang Mu knelt on the ground. Her upper body was completely naked. She had just been doused with a bucket of cold water and was shivering all over. Xue Xiao immediately covered my eyes. I desperately tried to pry them open. He firmly blocked them again. Xue Xiao gently wrapped his arm around my waist from behind. He bent his neck and chuckled softly by my ear. "Little jade, what is improper should not be seen." My scalp tingled, my whole body stiffened, and I dared not move. Tang said sharply, "What a disgrace, what a disgrace." Xue Xiao shook his golden fan and chuckled. "Lady Zhenghua, what is the meaning of this?" "Brother and sister, this, Your Highness." Tang Shi instantly felt his hair stand on end and knelt down in panic. "Your Highness, please be discerning. Tang Ji and my son are not biological siblings. Tang Ji is an orphan girl my son brought home." Tang Ji, wrapped in a blanket, lay on the bed and kowtowed. "Your Highness, Mu Gij and I are truly in love. I am willing to marry Mu Gij and become his wife." Tang Mu also kowtowed repeatedly. "Please grant us your blessing." "Your Highness, I wish to marry Gigi and become husband and wife." This, Xue Xiao stroked his chin in thought. I was held by him, and secretly pinched the back of his hand. Xue Xiao immediately nodded. "Let's do it. Tang Mu and Tang Ji, a perfect couple, shall be married on an auspicious day." After leaving the Tang residence, I boarded the carriage back to the palace. Xue Xiao lay on the soft couch, laughing. "The kitten I picked up has grown up and even knows how to hurt people now," I pouted. Feeling indignant, the news that the Crown Prince would personally visit the Tang residence was leaked by me. I was the one who arranged for the young masters to be there to catch them in the act. The Tang family certainly couldn't keep this matter under wraps. I added fuel to the fire, intentionally pushing things along. "Can you tell your brother why you did this?" I rested my chin on my hand, kneeling by the couch, and picked up a piece of candied fruit to eat. "What else could it be? I'm just kind-hearted. I can't bear to see lovers not end up together. They both have feelings for each other. Loving so deeply they die for one another. Of course I had to help them unite." I knew he had been reborn. He could have foreseen all of this. Tangji would drug him, he would commit absurd acts, be condemned by all, subjected to criticism. But he actually acquiesced to Tangji's actions. In his heart, he must have also wanted to marry Tangji. In the previous life, it was this very situation. Tang Mu hated me to the core. In this life, I will stir the pot even more. I want to see for myself. The wife Tang Mu begged for with all his heart. He would make a good match. Lost in thought, Xue Xiao reached out and gently tapped the tip of my nose. I snapped back to reality. Before me was his smiling face, as flawless as jade, at such a young age. "Do you even know what love is?" I glanced up at him and pretended to be profound. "A little more than you do, brother." Xue Xiao chuckled lightly and flicked my forehead with his finger. Sophistry. The carriage swayed along the bluestone road as he reclined lazily, looking at me with a half-smile. "You caused such a scene at the Tang residence today, all because of your kind heart." I continued eating the candied fruit, my tone sweet and syrupy. "Exactly. I can't stand to see lovers torn apart. Don't you think their passionate love is deeply moving?" Xue Xiao's penetrating gaze fell upon my face. He didn't press further, only reached out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear. "Since this is what you desire, I shall make it happen for you." However, Xue Xiao raised an eyebrow. "Your courage grows by the day. There are boundaries between men and women. Do not be curious about what you shouldn't see. I hid both hands behind my back and blinked innocently. There's no such thing. Xue Xiao looked at me and suddenly sighed. Xiao Yue, you're only 15. You're still very naive about what love is. I rested my chin in my hands and tilted my head to look at him. Does the Crown Prince understand? He paused, with a half-smile. Of course, I understand. Then, brother, teach me. I moved closer to him. What is love? Xue Xiao stared at me, his fingers slowly tracing the rim of the wine glass. His voice was low, as if sinking deep into the night. Love is wanting to protect her and keep her safe for a lifetime. Love is not allowing anyone to harm her in the slightest. Love is, even if she wants to hurt someone, making sure to clean up the aftermath for her. The carriage suddenly fell silent. My heart felt as if someone had squeezed it for a moment. Xue Xiao smiled carelessly. But you're still young, so it's normal if you don't understand. No rush, I'll teach you slowly. I bit into the candied fruit, my heart racing in a chaotic mess. He reached out and poked the tip of my nose again. Go back and rest early. Don't cause any more trouble, little kitten. His tone was lazy and doting, but I knew better. This Crown Prince would personally pry open all the fangs of fate for me, even if it means eternal damnation in the future. After court was dismissed, Xue Xiao insisted on dragging me to the temple. On a whim, he found an ordinary carriage and stubbornly insisted we go together. Mother asked me to go pray for a talisman. Come with me. The carriage jolted along the road, heading toward the outskirts. Midway, sudden shouts were heard outside the carriage. A group of people blocked the way. They were bandits. The bandits brandished their weapons, demanding money. Xue Xiao sighed softly and coldly instructed the coachman, Yunsheng. The carriage came to a halt. The previously unremarkable coachman leaped into action and subdued the thief in just a few moves. I lifted my skirt to step down from the carriage, only to hear the leader snort coldly and spit fiercely. Bah! What a streak of bad luck! My heart tightened abruptly. This scoundrel, I've actually seen him before. In my previous life, the Tang family met with disaster, and Tangji hanged herself. My father was furious because of my cruel methods. He severely enforced the family discipline, giving me 50 heavy blows with a rod. My brother left home in anger, and my mother sent me to find him. That day, my mother grabbed my collar and shouted fiercely, "It's all because of your stubbornness that you caused Gigi's death and drove your brother away. Tang Rui, go find your brother, otherwise, you will pay with your life." I dragged my injured body, wandering outside for a full day and night. With a persistent high fever, I couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed by the roadside. When I woke up, I saw several rough men with knives tying me up and dragging me roughly along the ground. They were shouting loudly, "Today we pulled off a big one." Then, an ordinary carriage passed by, saving me. The coachman wore a straw hat, hiding his face. Yet his movements were swift and precise. The wound on my back throbbed with a dull pain. The carriage owner tossed down a jar of ointment. The coachman fed the life-saving pill into my mouth and whispered softly, "Miss, the master asked me to tell you to live well." I was burning with fever, dazed and confused, and never got a clear look at the master's face. I only remember, I instinctively turned my head. Everything is exactly the same as in the previous life. The black thumb ring on Xue Xiao's hand, an ordinary carriage, a straw-hatted coachman, and also, at the same time, at the same place. So it turns out in my past life, I actually had such a connection with this Crown Prince Xue Xiao. I let out a bitter laugh. In this life and the last, I owe him far too much. I can't pay it back. I stared at Xue Xiao, who was resting with his eyes closed inside the carriage. The coachman respectfully asked, "Sir, how should we handle this?" He slowly parted his lips, his voice cold and sharp. "Kill him." I felt no emotion inside. Past life, I had narrowly escaped death. The very next day, I raided the bandits' den. These people are nothing but small-time thugs. The bandits burned, killed, and plundered neighboring villages, and even trafficked innocent young girls. They truly deserve to die. Think it over carefully. Over the years, Xue Xiao appeared to be indiscriminately killing innocent people. In reality, every person he killed deserved their fate. As for those beauties who were once sent to his mansion, they were all innocent women forced into prostitution. Xue Xiao had sent them to the southern border overnight, feigning their deaths to deceive the world. Why did he have to bear this infamy and become the villain everyone fears? I lifted the hem of my skirt. Without hesitation, I rushed into the carriage, throwing herself into Xue Xiao's embrace. His eyes slightly opened. He naturally caught me, holding me tightly in his arms, and said gently, "What's wrong, Yue? Are you scared?" I shook my head and held him tightly. Heaven has granted me a second chance at life. It must be for a certain moment, for me to save him. Tang Mu's wedding day was set for the 8th day of the 4th month, an auspicious date. I did not attend the ceremony. He got his wish to marry the one he loves. Naturally, he did not want me to appear again. Tang Ji secretly purchased more than 10 oil barrels and smuggled them into the mansion via the waterway. On the night of the wedding ceremony, all 30-some members of the Tang clan perished in the sea of flames. Tang Ji ignited the powder keg. She tried to escape in the chaos. I caught her on the spot. I ordered her to be taken to the Dali temple. Only Tang Mu managed to escape by chance. Because he was drunk and slept in a pavilion, he was rescued by the authorities, an expected outcome. No matter how many times I reminded him in my past life, Tang Mu never believed it. He only believed that Tang Ji loved him, was willing to do anything for him. To dissolve hatred, he saw Tang Mu again on a bustling street. The bride set the fire, and over 30 people in the Duke's residence perished in the flames. The emperor was furious. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Tang Ji was actually the orphan of the disgraced official Yang Xianling from 7 years ago. The case of the Yang family's downfall was personally handled by my father, appointed by the emperor himself. She harbored a deep hatred for the Tang family, living in anonymity for many years, only to seek blood for blood. Tang Ji was ordered to be executed after autumn. Tang Mu was utterly devastated. Staggering down the street, like a walking corpse, I stopped my carriage to block his way. He looked up blankly, muttering to himself, "I was wrong, Rui. I shouldn't have brought Tang Ji home, Rui. I caused father and mother's deaths, and you, I caused your death too." I lowered my gaze, pretending not to recognize him, and said calmly, "Lord Tang, what are you talking about, and who is Rui?" He followed me all the way to the Crown Prince's residence. It wasn't until Xue Xiao came out to welcome me back inside. Tang Mu suddenly snatched the sword from the guard at the door and shouted sharply, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, I beg you to treat Rui well." A flash of bloodlight. Tang Mu fell to the ground. He committed suicide by slitting his own throat in front of the Crown Prince's residence. My heart was overwhelmed with shock and turmoil. Xue Xiao rushed over. He covered my eyes, held my ice-cold hand, and shielded me. "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid, I'm here." I was frightened and ran a high fever that wouldn't subside. Xue Xiao stopped attending the morning court sessions. Every day he stayed by my bedside, feeding me medicine and wiping my sweat. I call out his name in my dream. He tightly holds my hand and whispers softly, "Yue, I'm here, I haven't left." The Empress sent a court lady to inquire, and Xue Xiao, enraged, smashed the screen and shouted angrily, "Go and tell your mistress, I don't know why Tang Mu committed suicide at my door. If the Dali temple wants to hold me accountable, so be it, just consider it as if I killed him. I have killed countless people. What difference does one more make?" I tightly held his hand. Weeping uncontrollably in my dream, the female official said expressionlessly, "Your Highness, the Empress summons you to the palace." Xue Xiao turned to the female official, his voice thundering, "Get out." When I woke up, Xue Xiao was leaning over the bedside, his eyes filled with delight. "You're awake." I had been unconscious for 7 days and 7 nights. Xue Xiao exhausted every means to pull me back from the brink of the nightmare described by the ghost doctor. The ghost doctor said you were almost there, just a little more. He held me in his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I thought I would never see you again. I was drawn into his embrace, his voice soft. "Xue Xiao, do you know my identity is?" "I know," he said, "the Tang family's second daughter who died in the womb. I've known for a long time. Yue, no matter who you are, I will not allow you to leave me." I closed my eyes, choking back tears as I said, "Okay." The Crown Prince refused to leave his residence or attend court because of a woman, prompting numerous officials to submit memorials of impeachment. The emperor was deeply anxious. At the morning court session, the emperor spat out a mouthful of black blood and collapsed in the hall. The empress hurried over to attend to him. That very night, the emperor passed away. The Crown Prince ascended the throne immediately to stabilize the court. With the imperial title in hand, The tides of the world shifted accordingly. Everything went far too smoothly. On the day of the coronation ceremony, I disguised myself as a man and followed closely behind Xue Xiao. At the moment of coronation, the Empress Dowager snatched the crown, her eyes wild with madness. I have the imperial decree. The one the late emperor intended to pass the throne to is my son. Xue Liang. The ministers aligned with the Empress Dowager immediately began to stir up trouble. The ministers unanimously demanded that Xue Xiao abdicate the throne. Xue Liang is now only 8 years old. Xue Xiao looked at the Empress Dowager with a face full of confusion. Why? The Empress Dowager pointed at him and said sharply, "You are not worthy. I only want you dead." She pulled a pearl hairpin from her hair and raised her hand to stab directly at Xue Xiao's chest, in the blink of an eye. I instantly moved to Xue Xiao's side. I snatched the pearl hairpin. He kicked the Empress Dowager to the ground. The entire palace was in an uproar. With a wave of her hand, the Empress Dowager summoned the imperial guards to swarm in. She shouted coldly, "Take it down." My eyes narrowed slightly. The wrist-mounted arrow in my sleeve glinting. One step, one move, seal the throat, cut down the enemy. Walking briskly along, countless assailants fell behind me. I swiftly returned to Xue Xiao's side once more. My gaze was icy cold. Who dares to hurt him? Seeking death. The hall erupted in an uproar. The ministers dumbfounded. No one had expected that Xue Xiao had a top-tier expert hidden by his side, capable of taking on 100 enemies single-handedly. Xue Xiao wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes and pulled the long sword from the ground. The tip of the sword pointed directly at the Empress Dowager, his voice cold and resolute. "Mother, I have obeyed you in everything, only because I respect you as my mother. Why must you insist on driving me to my death?" The Empress Dowager's face suddenly changed, and her throat choked with emotion. I slowly removed the veil hat, my long hair cascading like a waterfall. My gaze swept toward the Empress Dowager. "Because she is not your true mother, Xue Xiao. You are the son of the late imperial consort. Back then, your father deeply loved your mother, but had no choice but to appoint the legitimate daughter as empress. To secure your position as crown prince, he switched you with Xue Yu." My words landed with weight, each syllable clear and resonant. "Xue Yu is the Empress Dowager's own daughter. She died because of you, which is why the Empress Dowager hates you to the bone." Xue Xiao took a step back, his eyes filled with disappointment and shock. I pointed directly at the Empress Dowager and continued to reveal the shocking secret. It was her. The Empress Dowager administered a slow-acting poison and killed the late emperor. The Empress Dowager's eyes were filled with madness, her voice sharp and piercing. "What do you know? I was trapped in the harem for him, enduring countless flirtatious women around him, yet his heart was entirely set on my sister. How am I inferior to that low-born wretch, a mere bastard daughter born of a lowly servant, and she dares to call herself my sister?" I spit on her. Her face was contorted, devoid of any trace of reason. "Xue Xiao, he went to great lengths to ensure you would inherit the throne, even willing to die rather than issue a new decree. Even though you committed countless evil deeds and killed countless people, he still placed you on the highest throne. Why? Why?" I stood in front of Xue Xiao, my voice cold and sharp. "Xue Xiao has never done any evil. Every person he killed deserved their fate." A flicker of emotion passed through Xue Xiao's eyes. I continued, "You are merely exploiting Xue Xiao's feelings for you. He has been strategizing and planning every step carefully. Do you really think he doesn't know you intend to harm him today? He is simply gambling. Gambling that the mother who raised him still holds some care for him and won't truly take action against him. Past life, he was disheartened, despite his exceptional martial arts skills, yet you allowed the Empress Dowager to inflict such cruelty upon him." I turned to look at Xue Xiao, my tone resolute. "You have done enough as a mother for over a decade. Xue Yu's death has nothing to do with you. Xue Xiao, pull yourself together." Xue Xiao, with a composed expression, slowly stepped forward, walking step by step until he stood before the Empress Dowager, and issued a cold command. "Guards, escort the Empress Dowager to guard the Imperial Mausoleum. She is forbidden to leave for life." In the end, Xue Xiao voluntarily abdicated, allowing Xue Liang to succeed the throne. The Grand Secretary and the Prince Regent were both close ministers of Xue Xiao, appointed to assist the young emperor. From then on, the imperial court became orderly and the realm remained stable. He took me traveling across the land, detached from worldly affairs. We simply enjoyed our own world for two. We have traveled through famous mountains and great rivers. We have seen peach blossoms covering the hills, and snow falling on ancient temples. We have seen the water towns of the south, with their fading lights. Years later, late at night, the moonlight is like water. He gently held my hand and softly asked me, "How could you foresee so many things?" The combat prowess you had back then was not something a teenage girl could possess. I smiled, leaning into his embrace. My gaze tender. Perhaps it's a bond from a past life that brought us together again in this one. In our previous life, you saved me. In this life, it's heaven's will that I protect you, and also that I no longer have regrets. His warm hand gently stroked my hair as he lowered his head and kissed my lips. Then you won't be able to escape me in this lifetime. I chuckled softly, my heart filled with peace. I won't escape, in this lifetime. I only wish to stay by your side. From then on, the hatred and grievances of past lives drifted away with the wind. No matter the wind, frost, rain, or snow, we walk hand in hand. With the rest of our lives peaceful and serene, beyond the palace walls lies our world. Morning and evening accompany each other. The years pass silently, with him by my side. That is my entire world. And so the first story ends. What do you all think? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed it, please give this video a like. Now, here's the second story. My mother-in-law was born with a rebellious streak. Always doing things the opposite way and deliberately going against others. The physician said the Marquis should avoid ginseng, yet she immediately brewed a large bowl and insisted he drink it. I knocked over her ginseng soup and saved the Marquis's life, but she cursed me for being unfilial and bringing misfortune to my husband and family. The old Marquis warned her to be cautious at the palace banquet, but she immediately tried to expose the imperial consort's sore spot. I covered her mouth to prevent disaster and preserved the Marquis's dignity. Yet she called me a harbinger of doom and accused me of shaming her. She resented me for always hindering her efforts to benefit the Marquis's household, falsely accused me of poisoning, and with a letter of divorce, had me drowned in a pond. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the wedding night of the arranged marriage, looking at my mother-in-law, who affectionately said, "My child, I will take care of you myself." I smiled. In this life, I won't stand in the way anymore. I'd like to see how long my mother-in-law can keep the Marquis household glorious without my interference. The bride is awake. Quick, bring the wedding wine. I struggled to open my eyes, only to be met with an overwhelming expanse of red. "Young madam, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" A young maid in a pale green vest approached, her face full of concern. It was Chundao, my personal maid who had come with me from the Shun family in my previous life. Later, she was sent away to a manor by Lady Lu, and then, I heard she accidentally fell into a well. My eyes grew hot, and I said hoarsely, "It's nothing, just feeling a bit dizzy." No sooner had the words been spoken than a clamor arose outside the door. "Madam, please slow down. The Marquis is being attended by the estate physician." A voice, so familiar it sent a chill to the very marrow of my bones, rang out of my way. "My son, I will care for him myself. What do you servants know?" The door was pushed open with a loud bang. The visitor was none other than my dear mother-in-law, the elderly Lady Lu of the Jing'an Marquis Manor. Without even a glance at me, her new daughter-in-law, she rushed straight to the bedside. Lying there was my nominal husband, Xieheng. The Marquis of Jing'an. Lady Lu grasped Xieheng's cold hand, and tears came instantly. "My son, you have suffered. Rest assured, my child is here, and I will surely cure you." She turned her head, her gaze falling upon me. "Shunsha, since you have married into the Marquis household, you are Heng's wife. Heng's constitution is weak. You must attend to him meticulously day and night, putting his needs above all else." She paused, her brows slightly furrowed. "Those household physicians claim that Heng's body is too weak to handle tonics, especially avoiding such fine ingredients as ginseng and deer antler. I think it's just that their medical skills are inadequate, and they dare not use potent remedies. My son's health is so frail, how can we not nourish it? That century-old wild ginseng in my storage is perfect for this occasion." Century-old wild ginseng. These words pierced my memory like poison-tipped needles. In my past life, I watched with my own eyes as she brought me this bowl of ginseng soup. I was so terrified that my soul almost left my body. Remembering the physician's warning, I rushed forward without a second thought and knocked over that bowl of soup. Thanks to this, the Marquis narrowly escaped death and survived for the time being. But what was the outcome? Lady Lu flew into a rage on the spot, slapped me to the ground, and pointed at my nose, cursing, "You wretch! How dare you spill the life-saving medicine I prepared for my son? What are you plotting? Do you want to kill my son?" That bowl of ginseng soup I never drank became the ironclad proof she used countless times later to accuse me of being unfilial and wanting to harm the Marquis. It was also one of the triggers that ultimately led to her framing me and drowning me in the pond. I lifted my head, forcing a timid smile onto my face. A century-old wild ginseng, mother. You are so knowledgeable. If you say it's not nourishing enough, then it must be true. The Marquis is truly blessed to have a mother like you. Lu gave a light hum, her anger somewhat subsided. H, it's good that you know. What do the physicians in the mansion know? For my son's illness, we need strong medicine. That old ginseng is just sitting there anyway, and using it for my son is its true destiny. The more she spoke, the more she felt she was wise and brilliant. And the annoyance in her eyes when looking at me diminished somewhat. All right, you stay here and watch Hunger properly. I'm going to the small kitchen to personally supervise. With this ginseng soup, even the slightest difference in the heat is unacceptable. After saying that, she left with the maidservants. Looking immensely pleased with herself, the bridal chamber fell completely silent. In my previous life, I had stopped Lady Lu and saved Xieheng's life, but later, when Lady Lu dragged me away to be drowned in a pond, Xieheng lay on the couch, watching coldly as I was hauled off. This time, not only will I not stop them, I will also cheer for the Lu family. I must see if this bowl of perfect tonic soup can really pull Xieheng back from the brink of death. The bridal chamber was deathly silent, with only the faint, almost inaudible sound of Xieheng's breathing. Finally, hurried and chaotic footsteps sounded outside the door, accompanied by Madame Lu's deliberately raised voice. "Hurry, be careful, don't spill it. This is my son's life-saving medicine." The door was pushed open, and Madame Lu personally entered, carrying a red lacquer tray painted with gold patterns. "Hunger, be good, open your mouth. Mother has prepared something special for you. Drink it and you'll feel better," she coaxed softly, scooping a spoonful of thick ginseng soup and unhesitatingly poured it into Xieheng's mouth. Xieheng seemed disturbed, his brows furrowing even tighter as he unconsciously turned his head to avoid it. But Lady Lu paid no heed, gripping his jaw with one hand while forcefully shoving the spoon into his mouth with the other. Cough, cough, oh dear, slow down, my son, don't waste it, Lucia called out with distress, yet her movements showed no sign of slowing down. She scooped up another spoonful and poured it down even more forcefully. Nearly half a bowl of the ginseng soup was forced down by Lucia in a manner almost like force-feeding a duck. Xieheng's face, illuminated by the candlelight, gradually flushed with an unnatural redness, and his breathing became heavy and rapid. All right, as long as you drink it. Mother knew this ginseng soup would work. Lucia looked at the mostly empty bowl with satisfaction, wiped the corner of Xieheng's mouth with a handkerchief, and laid him flat. Only then did she remember my presence, glancing at me. "Madam Shen, you should learn from this. When tending to the sick, you must be like this, ruthless when you need to be ruthless. See, Hunger drank it all, didn't he?" The physician's words are just for reference. I lowered my eyelids, concealing the mockery in my eyes, and replied meekly, "Mother is right. Your daughter-in-law has learned her lesson. Only mother has such resolve, willing to sacrifice anything for the Marquis." Madame Lu, feeling even more pleased by the flattery, snorted, "That's natural. All right, you stay here tonight and keep a close watch on Hunger. Report to me immediately if there's any movement." She yawned. After all the commotion for most of the night, she was tired too. Satisfied, she left with the servant women. The bridal chamber fell into silence once again. I walked to the bedside and looked at Xieheng. His breathing grew increasingly rapid, a sound like a broken bellows rasping in his throat. This is a sign of deficiency unable to bear tonification. With qi and blood rebelling and surging upward, I stood quietly, neither calling for help nor panicking. Xieheng's convulsions grew more and more violent, his complexion shifting from a flushed red to a terrifying shade of cyanotic purple. Suddenly, his body arched violently, and a large mouthful of dark red blood spurted out. The time was ripe. and I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Someone, come quickly, soon." The entire Marquis's residence was in an uproar. Lady Lu was the first to rush in. "Hunger, my hunger, what's wrong with you?" She threw herself by the bedside, flustered and at a loss, trying to wipe the blood from Heng's mouth. "House physician, quickly. Call the house physician." Old Marquis Xie Hongyuan also arrived, his eyes wide with fury. The house physician kept in the residence scrambled in frantically and hurried forward to administer aid. After the needles and the forced medicine, they were busy for nearly half an hour. Finally, Xie Heng's breathing stabilized a little, though it remained faint as a thread. The physician wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and spoke to the old Marquis and Lady Lu in an extremely grave tone. My lord's condition is one of deficiency unable to withstand tonics. From now on, extreme caution must be taken, absolutely no further shocks or mistaken medication, especially avoid potent tonics like ginseng." Upon hearing the phrases mortal danger and severely depleted vitality, Madame Lu was so terrified her soul nearly fled her body, frozen beyond even the ability to weep. Upon hearing the physician's final words, "Avoid ginseng," she trembled all over, her face turning as pale as paper. Old Marquis Xie Hongyuan's face was livid as he looked at his wife collapsed on the ground, shaking with rage. "Lady Lu, what have you done? The physician warned you repeatedly. How could you?" Only then did Lady Lu snap out of her daze. She abruptly lifted her head, her bloodshot eyes scanning the chaotic crowd before finally locking onto me with an intense, unwavering glare. "It's you, Shen Qingzi, you jinx, you wretched woman who brings misfortune to her husband and family," she screamed, pointing at me. "It's your poor service, it's your failure to report in time, it's you who harmed my hunger." His here, exactly the same tactic as in my past life. The only difference is, I didn't spill that bowl of soup. I lifted my tear-streaked face, my voice trembling with unbelievable grievance. "Mother, how could you wrong your daughter-in-law so unjustly? Tonight, it was you who personally brewed the ginseng soup for the Marquis, and you who personally fed it to him. I was right there watching, unable to even help. Didn't you say it was life-saving medicine? How could it make the Marquis vomit blood and fall unconscious?" Every word I spoke was true, each syllable piercing the heart. Lu was left speechless by my retort, his face drained of all color. The gazes of the servants and attendants around us grew subtly complex. You, Lu trembled with rage, his fury ultimately dissolving into even more piercing wails. "My son, you've suffered so much. It's all my fault. I trusted the wrong people. I shouldn't have listened to those quack doctors. And I never should have let this harbinger of doom through our doors." Xie Hongyuan's gaze fell upon me, his voice low. "Shunsha, you had just entered the household when Henger met with misfortune. If it weren't for your ill-fated destiny that brings harm to your husband and family, how could this have happened? Tonight's incident, you'd better pray that Henger is unharmed." I lowered my head, concealing the surging hatred in my eyes. "Lucia may be foolish and malicious, but you, Xie Hongyuan, are utterly vicious and calculating. This near loss of a child, you shall bear it well. The blessings of the Marquis Manor are yet to come." Xie Heng was pulled back from the brink of death by the manor's physician, but he remained in a deep slumber all day, clinging to life by a mere thread. After experiencing that fright, Lady Lu indeed quieted down for a few days. But how could her deeply ingrained rebelliousness and desire for attention possibly be contained? On the birthday of the imperial consort, the emperor held a banquet in the palace and summoned the Marquis of Jingen and his wife to the palace to offer their congratulations. Upon hearing the news, Lady Lu's still swollen eyes lit up with an almost fanatical gleam. "Master, this is a tremendous honor. The emperor and the imperial consort have not forgotten our Marquis household. This is our chance to turn things around." Xie Hongyuan showed no trace of joy on his face and repeatedly cautioned, "Her Majesty the imperial consort lost her beloved son in her early years. This matter is a forbidden topic in the palace, and it is most taboo for others to mention it. You must be cautious with your words and actions. At the palace banquet, speak less, kowtow more, return immediately after offering your birthday wishes, and whatever you do, don't cause any trouble. Not a single extra word is allowed." Listening to the old Marquis's instructions, Madame Lu's face indeed flashed with a strong sense of disapproval and defiance. In my previous life, In order to stop Madame Lu from courting disaster at the palace banquet, I stayed up for several nights, copying the palace rules, etiquette, and the imperial consort's taboos into a thick booklet, which I then presented to her, earnestly urging her to memorize it thoroughly. And then what happened? Without even looking, she threw it directly into the brazier, scolding me for meddling in her affairs. At the palace banquet, she indeed spoke without restraint. If I hadn't rushed over in desperation to cover her mouth, the Marquis's household would have been charged with a crime on the spot. Yet afterward, not only was she ungrateful, she instead blamed me for making her lose face in front of the nobles, calling me a jinx and an unlucky wretch. In this life, I stepped forward gracefully, curtsied to the old Marquis, and spoke in a soft voice, laced with just the right amount of concern. "Father, please calm your anger. Mother is also concerned about the Marquis's household and wants to share its burdens." I turned to Lady Lu, my tone carrying a subtle hint of sighing and naivety. "Mother, I've also heard that the imperial consort lost her beloved son early on and has been deeply sorrowful ever since. At this birthday banquet, seeing other families with children enjoying their company must surely stir complex emotions in her heart. Don't you think? How pitiable is the heart of a parent. Even one as noble as the imperial consort cannot escape the pain of being separated from her own flesh and blood." My words, while seemingly lamenting the noble consort, actually precisely struck Lu's rebellious streak and desire for attention. Just as I thought. Upon hearing this, Lu's eyes immediately lit up. She straightened her back, a smug expression of "everyone else is drunk while I alone am sober" spreading across her face, and she sneered, "Pitiful. What is there to pity? If she lost a child, can't she just have another one? As a noble consort, is there anything she lacks? Crying and weeping all day long, drowning in the past, she's just making a fool of herself. If you ask me, she's just being melodramatic. Look at me, even though hunger is this sick." She stopped mid-sentence, realizing it was inappropriate, but the expression on her face, "I'm stronger than you. I see things more clearly than you," was completely undisguised. I'm not like her. Life must go on. The old Marquis was so angry his face turned ashen as he pointed at her. You wretch. How dare you utter such treasonous words? How dare you presume to discuss the imperial consort?" Lucia stiffened his neck, his rebellious spirit thoroughly provoked. "Did I say something wrong? It's the truth. As a noble consort, she ought to have the dignity befitting her status. Moping over the past all day, what kind of behavior is that? I'm doing this for her own good, to wake her up." "You, shut your mouth." Xie Hongyuan trembled with rage, wishing he could step forward and cover her mouth. I lowered my head at just the right moment, hiding the icy smile at the corner of my lips. I'm also curious to see how much of a stir Lady Lu's enlightened insights can cause in front of the imperial consort and His Majesty. 3 days later, the palace banquet. The Jing'an Marquis estate's carriage came to a halt before the palace gates. Xie Hongyuan's expression was grave. Before alighting, he sternly warned Lady Lu once more, almost through gritted teeth, "Remember, not a single word, kowtow. Offer birthday wishes, then come back with me immediately." Lady Lu, dressed in her court attire and wearing a heavy headdress, had an eager expression on her face as she responded perfunctorily, got it, stop nagging." The banquet was set in the imperial garden, brilliantly lit with lanterns and filled with the melodious sounds of string and wind instruments. The noble consort sat in the main seat, receiving the congratulations of all present. After 3 rounds of drinks, the atmosphere was lively and spirited. A princess consort of a commandery, holding her own exquisitely beautiful little heir who had just turned 1, stepped forward to present a gift to the noble consort. The little heir, unafraid of strangers, babbled and smiled at the noble consort, stretching out his chubby little hand to grab the hairpin swaying on her head. The imperial consort gazed at the jade-like, adorable child, her eyes momentarily dazed. At this very moment, sitting below, Lady Lu seemed to have finally found the perfect opportunity to console the imperial consort. She abruptly stood up, holding a wine cup. She strode to the front of the imperial throne, her voice booming and resounding throughout the entire banquet, instantly overpowering the music and laughter. "Imperial consort, please do not grieve too much." This shout was like a thunderclap out of a clear sky. It instantly drew everyone's attention. The entire imperial garden fell into a dead silence in an instant. Xie Hongyuan's face changed drastically as he abruptly stood up to stop it, but it was already too late. Lady Lu was completely unaware that she had become the center of attention and continued speaking on her own. Your Highness, although the young prince was short-lived and passed away early, you are still young and in good health. Why not just have another one? Look at my hunger, he's been sickly since childhood. And now he's even worse. But as his mother, I've never given up hope. I give him the best medicine every day, feeding him ginseng and deer antler as if they were regular meals. I simply refuse to believe he won't get better. You, as a noble consort, must think more positively and look ahead. Dwelling on past sorrows all day is hardly worth it. Don't you think? As for children, when one is gone, another will come along. Whoosh, the smile on the noble consort's face instantly froze. And all color drained from her cheeks. She pointed at Lady Lu, her lips trembling, and then she stiffly fell backward. Your Highness, noble consort. Shouts of alarm erupted as palace maids and eunuchs scrambled in chaos, and the scene instantly descended into pandemonium. Audacious Lu clan, how dare you speak such insolent words before the emperor, cursing the imperial consort and reopening her old wounds. Your heart is worthy of execution. Guards, seize them, Your Majesty. Please calm your anger, Your Majesty. Please calm your anger. Xie Hongyuan was already frightened out of his wits, falling to his knees with a heavy thud, his entire body trembling like a sieve. I have failed to properly discipline my wife. I deserve 10,000 deaths. I beg for Your Majesty's mercy. I beg for Your Majesty's mercy. Lady Lu watched as the unconscious noble consort was carried away, her voice hoarse as she cried out, I would never dare to curse the noble consort. I only feel for her, seeing how she longs for her son, how sorrowful and despondent she has become. I truly understand her pain. My own hanger is also gravely ill and bedridden. I only wanted to comfort her, to help her see things more clearly and look ahead, to have another imperial son or daughter. The more she spoke, the more she felt wronged, and the more she believed that others had misunderstood her good intentions. Fear made her words incoherent. But the stubborn belief that I'm not wrong and I'm doing this for your own good kept her defending herself. Silence, you venomous woman, how dare you quibble? The seal-holding eunuch trembled with rage, cutting her off sharply. Guards, drag her away at once. No, Your Majesty, I've been wronged. Every word I spoke came from the depths of my heart. Lady Lu struggled violently, actually shaking off the eunuch's hands that tried to drag her away, turning toward the imperial consort. She cried out with a near-delirious sincerity, Your Highness, wake up, please listen to me. I truly meant no harm. If the child is gone, you can have another. As a noble consort, is there anything you can't have? Why must you? Enough! A furious roar came from the dragon throne. The emperor slowly rose to his feet, the raging fury in his eyes almost tangible. Your Majesty, Lady Lu shuddered under that icy gaze, her words of defense stuck in her throat. My beloved consort's loss of her dear son is the lifelong regret of both her and myself. This is the deepest pain in my heart. A forbidden topic in the palace. How dare you recklessly discuss matters of my inner court? The emperor's voice carried the force of a thunderclap, pressing down until the entire imperial garden fell into dead silence. You keep saying you can empathize. You feel sorry for my beloved consort. The corners of the emperor's lips curled into a cold, deeply mocking arc. It seems to me that you are using this opportunity to vent your dissatisfaction with me, the court, and fate itself. Just because your son is gravely ill, you think everyone in the world should brush aside the pain of losing a child as lightly as you do. No, that's not it. Your Majesty, this humble woman wouldn't dare. Lady Lu was terrified out of her wits, kowtowing repeatedly until her forehead instantly turned bruised and purple. Wouldn't dare? I think you dare quite a lot. The emperor slammed the armrest of the dragon throne, his voice suddenly rising like a clap of thunder. Strip Lady Lu of her noble title, give her 30 strokes of the cane, confine her to the residence, and forbid her from leaving without an imperial decree. Let this serve as a warning to others. Xie Hongyuan, hearing that it was not an immediate death sentence, felt slightly relieved and quickly kowtowed to express his gratitude. As for you, Xie Hongyuan, the emperor's gaze fell upon Xie Hongyuan once again. Lax household governance and indulgence of a wife's moral failings warrant immediate revocation of nobility status. Reduction to commoner rank, in consideration of ancestral merits, the residence shall be retained. With 70% of family assets confiscated, stripping the title, Xie Hongyuan was as if struck by lightning, abruptly lifting his head. The century-old foundation of the Jing'an Marquisate, the noble title, all gone. Your Majesty, have mercy, the title. The title was passed down from our ancestors, Xie Hongyuan wailed in despair. The emperor waved his hand impatiently and turned to leave the hall. I stood at the end of the Ming consort's procession, watching everything with cold eyes. A chilling sense of satisfaction filled my heart. Inside the carriage on the way back to the estate, a deathly silence prevailed. Xie Hongyuan's face was livid, his bloodshot eyes fixed on me with an intense glare. Shen Qingzi, if it weren't for you, this jinx, bringing bad luck into our household, how could the Marquis estate have come to this? You were right beside your mother-in-law at that time. Why didn't you stop her? Are you dead? He grew more and more agitated as he spoke, his spittle nearly spraying onto my face. You are Heng's wife, the young mistress of the Marquis estate. Don't you know what should and shouldn't be said? I lowered my head, my nails digging deep into my palms. In my past life, I desperately tried to stop it, only to end up drowned in a pond. In this life, why should I still interfere? I forced myself to lift my head, wearing just the right amount of grievance on my face. Father, please calm your anger. Your daughter-in-law was so frightened at the time, with the noble consort seated above and so many esteemed guests watching. I didn't dare. I slightly turned my head, avoiding his devouring gaze. Moreover, Mother has such a strong temperament. I was afraid that if I rashly stepped forward to intervene, it would only provoke her further and cause an even bigger scene before His Majesty. Wouldn't that be? I paused at just the right moment. Leaving the implication hanging in the air, Xie Hongyuan was left speechless by my retort. He was well aware of the kind of temperament the Lu family possessed. He knew better than anyone that once the Lu family's rebellious streak kicked in, not even 9 oxen could pull them back. He couldn't entirely shift the blame onto me, because failing to restrain the Lu family was, in itself, the greatest tragedy for the Xie family. Trash, in the end. He could only squeeze out these 2 words through gritted teeth. The news that the noble consort was fainted from anger by Lady Lu, the wife of Marquis Jing'an, at the birthday banquet spread throughout the capital overnight. Lady Lu was then pinned down on a long bench by palace eunuchs and given 30 solid strikes with the court rod. After the 30 strikes, Lady Lu's flesh was torn open and she was drenched in blood. Immediately after, officials from the Ministry of Revenue arrived with fierce-looking soldiers to carry out the confiscation of her family's property. The once magnificent and orderly Marquis's residence was turned completely upside down. Valuable antiques, calligraphy, paintings, gold, silver, jewels, land deeds, and property titles were sealed and carried away in boxes one after another. The maids and servants were terrified out of their wits, and most were dismissed amidst cries and wails. The entire mansion was shrouded in sorrow and despair, with weeping and wailing shaking the heavens. Its former glory had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the desolation of broken walls and ruins. I watched all of this with a cold eye, my heart devoid of sorrow or joy, only a chilling calmness. Lu lay face down on the bed, her back and buttocks a bloody mess, writhing in excruciating pain, yet she continued to curse incessantly, a foolish emperor, a treacherous consort. I only spoke a few words of truth. What right do they have to treat me like this? And that jinx Shen Qingzi, it's all her fault, it's all her fault. She's the one who brought disaster upon the Marquis's household. Xie Hongyuan trembled with rage as he listened to her curses. He grabbed the only medicine bowl left by his side and hurled it fiercely at her. You foolish woman, you venomous woman, shut your mouth. The century-old foundation of the Marquis's household has been completely ruined by your foul mouth. Why don't you just die? The medicine bowl smashed against the bedpost beside Madame Lu, shattering and splashing her face and clothes with bitter liquid. Madame Lu trembled with fear, finally daring not to curse loudly anymore, only whimpering softly, her eyes filled with venomous resentment. I entered Xie Hongyuan's room holding a bowl of plain kanji, my face wearing just the right amount of worry and deference. Father, please have some kanji. Your health is what matters most, I said, placing the bowl on the small bedside table, the only piece of furniture that hadn't been confiscated. Leave it, He waved his hand weakly, his voice hoarse. I didn't leave, but instead sighed as if unintentionally, murmuring softly, "Ah, this house raid, it's really, everything was turned out, even those old accounts and documents in your study. Father, were all rummaged through and carried away in boxes, old accounts, documents." Xie Hongyuan jolted awake with a start. He struggled to sit up, but the movement aggravated his internal injuries, causing him to grimace in pain. What old accounts? What did they find? I put on a face of bewilderment and lingering fear. Your daughter-in-law isn't quite sure either. I only overheard the officials muttering in the study something about military pay, account books. The sums mentioned were quite substantial, and there were a few old letters. But father, after all your years in office, those must just be some insignificant old documents, right? Military pay, letters. Xie Hongyuan's face instantly turned as pale as paper, completely drained of color. No, impossible. Those things, He suddenly looked at me, his eyes becoming extremely sharp and fearful. How do you know? What did you see, in my previous life? Before I was drowned in the pond, I had been locked in the woodshed near the study. At that time, Xie Hongyuan thought I was doomed, so when he held secret talks with his trusted advisors in the study, he no longer avoided the topic as he usually did. Through the thin wall, I intermittently overheard their heated arguments about military pay and account books. At that time, I was struggling to save myself and didn't think too deeply about it. It wasn't until I was drowned in the pond and reborn that I pieced together those fragmented words. Xie Hongyuan, this hypocritical Marquis of Jing'an, had actually embezzled military funds while serving in the Ministry of War, a crime severe enough to warrant the execution of his entire clan. This matter was handled with extreme secrecy. The relevant account books and several incriminating secret letters were all hidden in a secret compartment in his study. Losing his title and having his property confiscated might still allow him to linger on as a wealthy man, but embezzling military funds, this is a crime punishable by beheading, confiscation of property, and the execution of 9 generations of one's family. Those secret letters would also implicate his former accomplices. Those people now hold high positions of power. How could they possibly let him live? Daughter-in-law. I only heard the officials mention it in passing. At the time, they found a box hidden in a secret compartment in the study. It seemed to contain some account books and letters. Father, what's wrong? You look so pale. Is your old illness acting up again? I still maintained a clueless and ignorant expression, with a hint of timidity. A secret compartment. Xie Hongyuan was as if struck by lightning, his entire body completely frozen. I met Xie Hongyuan's desperate gaze with clear, innocent eyes, carrying just the right amount of concern. Father, what else do you need? Would you like some water? Let your daughter-in-law pour you a cup. Seeing my naive and obedient demeanor, Xie Hongyuan's last bit of strength drained away. A few days later, a team of imperial guards clad in Fei uniforms once again stepped into this lifeless mansion. Traitor Xie Hongyuan, during your tenure at the Ministry of War, you embezzled military funds. The evidence is conclusive. By the Emperor's oral decree, you are to be arrested and taken to the imperial prison to await judgment. Xie Hongyuan was roughly dragged from his sickbed by 2 imperial guards. A heavy kang was fastened around his neck, and he was hauled out of the mansion gate like a dead dog. He didn't even have the strength to struggle, only muttering incessantly, "Retribution, retribution." Mrs. Lu lay in the next room, listening to her husband's screams and the harsh rebukes of the imperial guards. So terrified that her soul seemed to flee her body, she buried her head tightly under the quilt, not even daring to breathe loudly. With Xie Hongyuan imprisoned, Mrs. Lu severely injured, and Xie Heng on the verge of death, the household fell into chaos, and no one could restrain me any longer. This was the final opportunity, and the key to my escape. Through a distant relative of Chun Dao's family who worked in the Yamen, I spent a fortune to bribe the officials and gained entry into the cold, grim imperial prison to visit Xie Hongyuan. In the cell, Xie Hongyuan was curled up in a corner, disheveled and grimy, his eyes vacant, having long lost the imposing dignity of a former marquis. When he saw me, his murky eyes shifted slightly, and he rasped, "What are you doing here?" To mock an old man like me, I set down the food container, my face wearing just the right amount of sorrow and pleading. "Father, the Marquis's household has suffered such a great disaster. This daughter-in-law's heart feels as if cut by a knife. Now mother is severely injured, and the Marquis likely has little time left. The Xie family bloodline is in grave danger. This daughter-in-law is incompetent. But I beg father to grant Chun Dao and me a way out. I beg father to bestow a letter of divorce, so that this daughter-in-law may return to her natal family, and perhaps preserve something, so as not to let the Xie family bloodline be completely extinguished within this prison. Xie Hongyuan trembled all over, a violent fluctuation flashing through his lifeless eyes. He stared at me intently, as if trying to detect any falseness on my face, but at this moment, he had reached the end of his rope. Bloodline severed, he murmured, tears streaming down his aged face. After a long while, as if he had exhausted the last of his strength, he said dejectedly, "Enough, enough. Bring me paper and a brush." Xie Hongyuan, his hand trembling, wrote the letter of divorce. The handwriting was slanted, yet it clearly stated, "Due to drastic changes in the family, I cannot bear to let Miss Shen waste her youth. Hence, I hereby release her, allowing her to marry as she pleases, with no further obligations between us." A handprint stained with ink paste was pressed beneath the words. "Take care, father," I whispered, then turned and walked away from this prison reeking of death. Never looking back, with the divorce letter in hand, I no longer had any reservations in my heart. The final step of my revenge could now begin. A wandering Taoist priest with an immortal-like aura happened to pass by the back gate of the Xie residence one day, after the confiscation of the family property. Most of the servants had been dismissed, leaving the back gate poorly guarded. The priest muttered to himself, saying things like an overwhelming aura of resentment and a calamity of bloodshed. His voice was neither too loud nor too soft, just enough to be overheard by Mama Zhong, a trusted confidant of Madame Lu, who happened to be lingering nearby. Mother Zhong, who was already superstitious, was further frightened by the recent tragedies in the household. She quickly invited the Taoist priest inside and reported to Madame Lu, "Infinite Heavenly Lord. Madam, this humble priest observes a dense accumulation of resentment above your mansion, with dark clouds pressing down, a sign of great calamity." As soon as the Taoist priest entered, he began counting on his fingers and assumed a grave expression. Madame Lu, as if clutching at a life-saving straw, hurriedly poured out her woes. "Revered priest, save us, revered priest, my son." The Taoist put on a show as he walked to Xie Heng's bedside, examined his complexion, lifted his eyelids, and then shook his head, saying, "Alas, your son's condition is a sign that his soul has left his body, and his young energy is nearly exhausted. Ordinary medicine is powerless to save him now. Then, what should we do? Master, please save my son. I'll pay any amount." Madame Lu fell to her knees with a thud, kowtowing repeatedly. The Taoist stroked his beard, pondered for a moment, then took out a small sandalwood box from his robe and carefully opened it. Inside was a pill the size of a longan fruit. "This is the secret elixir of my sect, the 9 Revolutions Soul Returning Pill. It has the power to seize the creation of heaven and earth, and reverse life and death. As long as your son takes this pill, it will surely strengthen his foundation, nourish his vitality, and summon his soul to prolong his life." Madame Lu stared at the pill, which glowed with a swirling red light, her eyes shining with an intense gleam. "A divine pill. Truly a divine pill. Thank you, immortal master. Thank you, immortal master." She eagerly reached out to take it. The Taoist closed the box, looking troubled. "However, this elixir is not easy to refine and requires immense resources. Money, I have money." Madame Lu hastily pulled out the last few gold trinkets she had kept as her emergency stash and shoved them all toward the Taoist. "Immortal master, I beg you to grant me the medicine." The Taoist weighed the gold in his hand, a flicker of greed flashing in his eyes, before reluctantly handing the elixir to Madame Lu. "Very well, saving a life is a greater merit than building a 7-story pagoda. Remember, old madam, this elixir is potent and must be taken with rootless water. After taking it, you must rest quietly and must not be disturbed." Lu Sha held the elixir as if it were a priceless treasure, clutching it tightly in his hand. With 1,000 words of gratitude, he saw the Taoist off. I watched this farce unfold with cold eyes, my heart chilled to the bone. That Taoist was nothing more than a wandering charlatan, a swindler who roamed the land peddling his deceitful tricks. That so-called 9 Revival Soul Returning pill is nothing but a poisonous pellet loaded with large amounts of cinnabar and potent, dangerous drugs. An ordinary person would suffer from taking it, let alone someone like Xie Heng, who is already at death's door. Holding the elixir as if it were a rare treasure, Lu stumbled and rushed back to Xie Heng's bedside. "Heng, my son, you are saved. The immortal master has bestowed an elixir. Take it and you will be cured." She ignored Xie Heng's unconscious state, forcibly pried open his mouth, and was about to force the pill down his throat. "Mother, you mustn't." I appeared just in time, my face filled with panic and concern. "That pill's origin is unknown. How can the Marquis, in his current weakened state, take such potent medicine? What if—" "Get away." Lady Lu, like a mother beast protecting her cub, shoved me aside fiercely, her eyes filled with ferocity. "What do you know? This is an immortal pill, a life-saving medicine. You just can't stand to see Heng get better. You're just wishing for his death. Get out of here." She was completely deaf to any dissuasion at this moment. Her rebellious spirit had reached its peak. The more I tried to stop her, the more convinced she became that this pill could save her son. She forcibly shoved that crimson pill into Xie Heng's mouth, then picked up a cup of rainwater that had been collected at some unknown time. Ignoring Xie Heng's weak choking, she forced it down his throat. All right, just swallow it and you'll be fine. My dear Heng, you'll be better soon." Lu Sha watched as the pill was swallowed, letting out a long sigh of relief. The sickly satisfaction and anticipation spreading across her face, she stayed by the bedside, her eyes fixed unblinkingly on Xie Heng. Time passed bit by bit. At first, Xie Heng showed no reaction. Gradually, a strange flush spread across his ashen face. His breathing suddenly became heavy and rapid. His body began to convulse violently and unconsciously. Huff, huff. A sound like a broken bellows escaped his throat. His eyes snapped open, but his pupils were unfocused and vacant. Staring fixedly at the canopy above, "Heng, you're awake," Madame Lu exclaimed in surprise. However, the next second, phut, a large mouthful of dark red, nearly black blood gushed violently from Xie Heng's mouth, splattering Lu's face and hair all over, immediately followed by the second mouthful. The third mouthful, Xie Heng's body twitched violently a few times like a fish out of water, then suddenly stiffened, his pupils completely dilated. He lay stiffly on the bed. Without another sound, Lady Lu was splattered with blood across her face. She froze for a moment, then let out a heart-wrenching scream, throwing herself forward and shaking Xie Heng's body desperately. "Heng, what's wrong with you? Don't scare your mother. Wake up, the elixir. How could the elixir?" Her voice cut off abruptly, because she saw that at the corner of Xie Heng's mouth, there remained the residue of cinnabar from the elixir that had not fully dissolved. Lu Sha collapsed to the ground as if all the bones had been pulled out of her body. A heart-wrenching, utterly desperate wail tore through the roof of the Xie residence and echoed in the courtyard. A mourning hall was set up, with white funeral banners fluttering. Lu Sha knelt beside Xie Heng's coffin, weeping so bitterly that her voice grew hoarse, fainting several times from the grief. The only remaining old servant, suppressing his fear, cautiously stepped forward and whispered in an attempt to console her. "The mourning hall must remain solemn and quiet, and the old Marquis is still in prison. The household cannot afford any more chaos." Solemn, quiet, and nearly deranged, cold smile suddenly appeared on Madame Lu's face. "I refuse. My son left this world in such a cold, lonely manner. I want to make this mourning hall lively. I want everyone to know that my son is gone, that he left with a bang. Madame Lu, am still the mistress of this household." Struggling to her feet, ignoring the searing pain in her back and buttocks, she stumbled and staggered back towards her own courtyard. A moment later, Madame Lu returned. She had taken off her plain mourning clothes and changed into an extremely vibrant outfit. It was a set of her formal court attire that she had kept stored away at the bottom of her chest. She had even redone her hair and put on the few remaining gold hairpins and dangling ornaments she had. "Madam, what are you doing?" The butler was terrified out of his wits, his voice trembling with fear. "The mourning hall, this is a sacred place. How could you dress like this? This is the utmost disrespect. The utmost disrespect." Lu raised his head, his face bearing a sickly, almost boastful pride. "My son is dead. Why should you care what I wear? I will wear it anyway." I'm going to dress beautifully. I want to let Hanger know that his mother hasn't fallen. I'm still the wife of the Marquis." As she spoke, ignoring the horrified gazes of the servants, she moved step by step, about to enter the morning hall. At the entrance of the morning hall, to ward off the cold, stood a large bronze brazier filled with burning charcoal. Lu's mind was solely focused on stepping into the morning hall in her splendid attire, flaunting her rebellious spirit and unyielding nature, with no attention to spare for what lay beneath her feet. Just as she was about to cross the threshold and enter the morning hall, her foot caught on the high doorstep. Lu stumbled headlong, plunging straight into the blazing charcoal brazier. Ah! A piercing shriek, so shrill it seemed inhuman, instantly echoed through the entire morning hall. The highly flammable, opulent crimson silk gown that Madame Lu wore was instantly ignited by the charcoal fire. By the time the crowd scrambled to drag Madame Lu out of the brazier, she had already become a human torch. Most of her hair was scorched away, exposing her scalp, which smoldered with wisps of grey smoke. His nose and lips were almost melted together, and one eye was burned away, leaving only a black hole. The excruciating pain had robbed her of the ability to scream, leaving only the eerie groans forced from the depths of her throat. The morning hall was deathly silent, save for the crackling of the flames. Xieheng's funeral was hastily conducted. The once illustrious Jing'an Marquis Manor was now desolate and deserted. The stripping of the title, the confiscation of the family property, the old Marquis's imprisonment, and the sudden death of the heir, a series of blows had completely stripped this century-old mansion of its former glory. Only a handful of mourners attended the funeral, mostly distant relatives or down-and-out old acquaintances, their eyes filled with pity, detachment, and even a hint of schadenfreude. 3 days after the funeral, a group of Yamen runners clad in black uniforms, led by a secretary from the Ministry of Justice, stepped into the lifeless mansion. "Where is the criminal woman Lu?" The official's voice was icy, devoid of any emotion. Lu was supported by 2 elderly servants as she emerged from the side room next to the morning hall. Her gaze was unfocused, and upon seeing the constables, she instinctively shrank back. "Lu, you are suspected of murdering your own son Xieheng. The evidence and witnesses are conclusive. By order of the Ministry of Justice, you are to be taken into custody." The official unfurled the document in his hand and read aloud, "No, I didn't harm Hanger, it was him who." Madame Lu's voice had improved somewhat, but remained hoarse. A final glimmer of light burst from her clouded eyes as she suddenly pointed at me, standing nearby in plain morning attire. "It's her, it's that bitch Shinqingzi. She's the one who killed my Hanger. She poisoned him. Arrest her, arrest her." The bailiffs stepped forward expressionlessly, the cold iron chains clanking as they were fastened around Lucia's emaciated wrists. "Criminal woman Lu, cease your wild and unfounded words," the presiding official sternly rebuked. "The death of Xieheng has been clearly determined by the coroner's autopsy results. He died from taking potent and dangerous medicine, which caused his heart vessels to rupture. His personal maidservant has already confessed, having witnessed you forcibly feeding him the elixir. The residue of the elixir has also been verified to be the 9 Revolutions soul-returning elixir sold by that charlatan. The evidence is irrefutable, and there is no room for your excuses." The elixir, Lu murmured, collapsing weakly. "I did it to save him, I did it to save him." The bailiffs ignored her wailing, hoisted her up, and began dragging her out. Lu was dragged along like a torn sack, her feet leaving chaotic marks on the ground, her mouth still unconsciously repeating, "I was trying to save him, I didn't harm him. Shinqingzi, you bitch, why didn't you stop me?" The voice gradually faded away, eventually disappearing beyond the mansion gates. A few days later, news arrived. Xiahong Yuan, upon learning of his son's death in the imperial prison, refused to eat or drink, and on a cold winter night, quietly passed away. When the jailer found her, the body was already stiff. In the prison of the Ministry of Justice, Lucia rambled incoherently all day long. At times, she would hoarsely cry out, "My son." At other times, she would curse, "That bitch Shinqingzi," and then she would kowtow to the heir, claiming to be a lady of the commandery. On an equally cold winter night, she curled up on the icy pile of straw and never woke up again. The authorities hastily collected her body and dumped it in a mass burial ground. The residence of the Marquis of Jing'an was reclaimed by the court. changed hands several times, and was eventually purchased by a newly risen noble, completely transformed without a trace of its former appearance. The Xie family had completely vanished from the roster of the capital's nobility. After the dust settled, I took Xie Hongyuan's letter of divorce written in prison, along with the official documents for returning to my maiden family that I had filed through connections, and calmly left this cage with Chundao. We did not return to the Shun family, that maternal family, which had treated me with cold indifference after my family's decline and used me as a tool to cling to the Marquis's household. Was no longer my home. Using a small sum of gold and silver from the Marquis's secret stash, which I knew of from my past life's memories and which had escaped confiscation, I bought a house with a small courtyard in a tranquil town south of the Yangtze River. The house was not large, but it was clean and tidy. A few osmanthus trees grew in the courtyard. Though it was not the flowering season, their lush branches and leaves were full of vibrant life. I changed out of my plain morning clothes and put on a light blue dress made of fine cloth. Washing away all the glamour of being the young mistress of the Marquis household, I opened a small embroidery workshop, relying on the exquisite embroidery skills I had been forced to hone in my previous life at the Marquis residence. Taking on embroidery work, my life, though not wealthy, was peaceful and stable. It was another autumn day, and the osmanthus flowers had bloomed. The small courtyard was filled with a refreshing, sweet fragrance. I sat under the osmanthus tree, holding a cup of light tea in my hands. Chundao was drying the freshly washed embroidery threads nearby, and the sunlight filtered through the branches and leaves, dancing upon her. "Miss, look at these osmanthus flowers. How beautifully they bloom." Chundao smiled, plucking a small cluster of golden osmanthus and handing it to me. I took it and brought it to my nose for a gentle sniff. The fragrance was rich, carrying the scent of new life. "Yes, it's blooming beautifully," I said softly, my gaze drifting toward the azure sky beyond the courtyard wall. "I am no longer anyone's luck-bringing bride, no longer a thorn in anyone's side. I am just Shinqingzi, a Shinqingzi who lives for herself." Putting down the teacup, I picked up the needle and thread and began to embroider a new pattern. The cold wind will eventually pass. My spring has only just begun.